let's talk about some more helpful things that can make work a little bit easier. Okay, so when we're looking at this handle, what I'm seeing more than shapes is a bunch of lines. So I'm going to try making this handle out of lines and see what happens. Let's start not with a fill because we're trying to use strokes. And I'm going to use not pink because it is pink. And now let us begin. So let's start with this line, this, okay. And we can always fix this up afterwards. I can hit V to end the line. A will get us the direct selection tool so we can fix up these handles. Okay, now I can also just duplicate this line to create the other shape. Okay, now what we're gonna do is use these two over here. I'm gonna create Pathfinder. Let's see what happens. So that didn't really help us because it just made it into one big shape. Let's see if we can use one of these to help us. No, that's not working. Okay, so what we can do is we can try closing the shape. So I'm going to hit this one. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to hit Command or Control J. Actually, before this, I would like to save one of these lines, so I'm going to duplicate it and hold it for later. Okay, so I'm going to hit A to get the direct selection, select, hold Shift, select the next one, Command or Control J, hold Shift, Command or Control J. Okay, now look, we've made the basic shape of this. I'm going to make the handle white. Okay, great. Let's take that away just so that way we can see, so we can see through it because I want to be able to see all these highlights. Okay, so I'm seeing that there is, let's say, this could be black over here. I'm going to use the scissor tool to cut. And then I can use this part of the line over here. Okay. Now if we make this, and before I cut it, again, I actually want to save the line so that way we can keep reusing it. So I'm going to put this into the place that I want it. I'm going to use my scissor tool. You can get that by hitting the letter C. I'm going to cut this, delete that part of the line. Let's move this to where we might want it. I'm going to duplicate this piece so that way we can have it twice. I'm going to duplicate this piece so we can have it twice. I actually don't see it a second time, but yeah. Okay, now we're going to fill this in. Let's make these black lines. Let's change the profile of the lines to make them feel more organic. Now we can also make them stronger. We can change the direction. Now, something that I think is missing here is like the lip of the handle, and that's why I saved this guy. And at the end, we're gonna move the handle all the way in the back. Okay, so we have this line right here. I'm going to hit Command or Control Shift, right bracket to bring it all the way up. Okay, so this line right here, that outline, I'm going to make this 10. That's really big. Let's make it a little smaller. Let's make it 7. Okay, so this I think maybe a little bit smaller. Let's make it 5. I think this really helps the shape by having this outline over here, but the problem with lines is that they're like pretty hard to edit. When you have these shapes, you can change the width of things. You can make even when you make the profile not uniform, you have no control over how it's going to show up. So if you wanted to have more control over your shape, which is exactly what I want, what we can do is have our path, so that's our line, go to Object, Path, and then not join, not average. We want to outline the stroke. And that's going to convert the stroke into a shape, which makes it a lot more editable. So now I can do things like moving these lines, moving the points. I can just generally change the shape a lot more easily than you can when it's a line. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing over here. I'm gonna make another line. And just so I can practice something that we talked about when we were doing the palm leaf, instead of dragging and making the shape correct the first time, I'm just gonna drop the points that I'm gonna need. And then let's hit V to end the line. And now I'm going to use the anchor point tool, Shift C, to correct it. There we go. And sometimes when you do it that way, you actually end up with a better line than if you did it by dragging in the first place. I want these two to be the same. Now I'm going to go to Path, Outline Stroke, and now because this is a shape, I can select this point and move it so that way it matches up with the other part of the handle. We're also going to probably want that part. So let's just duplicate this one. Okay. Which means that we didn't end up needing this line, so I'm really just going to duplicate this one. And you end up with two shapes that create the handle. Something that I think might maybe be better is if this was a different shape, whatever. Let's just do it this way, duplicate, and now we've got two shapes. Ooh, what happened there is I let go of Option before I let go of my cursor, so it just moved the shape, it didn't duplicate the shape. When you're using modifiers, you always need to let go of the mouse before you let go of the modifier. Okay, now we can fine tune by using the direct selection tool. There we go. And that's how we can make lines or paths into shapes, which makes them a lot easier to edit. We can now select all of the shapes and lines that we used. For the handle, I'm going to hit Shift Command left bracket to move it down. And now we have this pretty great handle. We can add more highlights to this if we want. We can leave it as it is. I think that it's looking pretty great. I want to point out some useful tools that I didn't end up needing for this particular project. So I'm going to select this entire image. Let's turn that off. And I'm just going to use this space over here. Something that could be useful if you're making something like wheels with a spoke. You can use the repeat tool. So over here, if you go to repeat, you can, let's say, do a radial grid. You can bring these in. This could help you make something like a wheel. It could help you make something that rotates. You can add some cool stuff with the repeat tool. Repeat also doesn't just go in radials. Sometimes if you're trying to make something that needs a grid or repeating things, you can create a gridded pattern. So let's say we have, I'm just going to make a line. Let's say we have this right here, and we go to Object, Repeat, and you want to repeat that grid. You can repeat it This won't probably come up in most of your projects, but it might, so it's worth knowing about. Another thing I want to bring up, we've been using the pen tool generally to make shapes because it's the most accurate way to make shapes, but it's not the most organic way to make shapes. And if you're making a shape that's supposed to be organic, like let's say you're making pasta or you're making a wire or a cord, I find that the best way to do that is with the brush tool. You can get the brush tool by hitting the letter B, and then you could use it to make these more organic shapes. They can be hard to do with a trackpad. Definitely easier if you're using a mouse, but still worth doing. So let's say you're making a microphone. We could make a really slapdash microphone right here. And then we would, let's say, use the pen tool to make the holder of the, I'm losing my words, but you're using it to make the the thing that you grab onto from the mic, right? And then let's say you wanted to make a cord, and you could wrap the cord around the letter. Probably easier to do that with the brush tool than using the pen tool. So the brush tool can also be pretty helpful. You can use when you use the brush tool, let's select the line. So hit V. Notice that this line is made up of lots and lots of points. If you want, you can smooth the points. Right? So this will smooth your shape out for you. You can simplify your shape. This is going to have more points. This is going to have fewer points. You can let AI do it for you. You do not have to. But either way, these are things that can help you when you're using the paintbrush tool. Something else that you can do when you're using the paintbrush tool is change the profile of the line. Let's see if that's true. Nope. It seems like it's not. When you use the paintbrush tool, this would be a difference between the paintbrush and the pen, is that when you have a paintbrush, you can change the brush, but that's beyond the scope of this class. Changing the brush would change the profile of the line, but whatever you paint with is going to be uniform for this class. So I just wanted you to know about how to convert lines or paths into shapes, and also how to use the repeat and the paintbrush. Okay, so those are some helpful tools. Illustrator can do so many more things than we're going to talk about in this class, and you are all invited to experiment and try something. If there's something you want to try but you don't know how to do it, please ask, because whatever you want to do, there is a way to do it.